Hi, my name is Jim and I was retired. I'm beginning my 5th year on YouTube and my second decade in a DIY retirement. So I thought I'd use this video to show you how I'm doing on my 3 bucket portfolio and the big changes I'm planning to make in 2026. So let's dive right in and I'll show you real results for 2025 and my plans for 2026. Based on the results I've seen so far for 2026, it's likely to be very cold. Now, that's a subtle way of reinforcing that past experience or even pausing to look at your conditions at any given time will really not tell you about what the future will bring. The best you can do is plan ahead. Now, in our DIY retirement, we use a bucket system, a portfolio by time buckets and tax buckets to keep track of our entire portfolio. Now, we have a time bucket 1, which has what we need to withdraw for expenses in the next 3 years. And bucket 2 is those expenses that we will need to meet in the 5 years after that. Again, withdrawals from our portfolio now that we're both collecting Social Security by the end of this year. More on that later. But that adjusts how much withdrawal we need to make from our portfolio. Now that's bucket 1 and 2. Bucket 3 is for equity investments, long-term investments that we can let ride and grow for growth. This is inflation protection for us for a long retirement. Assets that we do not need for the next 8 years are in bucket 3. So in addition to the time buckets, we also pay attention to the tax buckets. We have taxable bank and brokerage accounts. We have most of our retirement savings in tax-deferred accounts, and we have tax-free Roth accounts, both my Roth 401k and Roth IRAs for each of us. Those are tax-free assets. And I have a portfolio that considers the 3 time buckets and the 3 tax buckets. Now, keep in mind, I've described this bucket strategy, portfolio by buckets, in a whole playlist that you can find here. And you can download a sample of my spreadsheet from my Google Sites for free. I don't charge anything. I'm sharing my lessons learned with you. Stay to the end of this video and I'll illustrate how you can find it and download a copy. Now let's just dive into the screen and take a look. I'm here on my laptop and I'll show you my spreadsheet in numbers. This is our overall retirement portfolio look, and this includes everything, what we have in our retirement accounts, our brokerage accounts, our tax-free accounts, and our bank, all of our retirement assets. The only thing this doesn't include is our house. I don't view our house as part of our retirement portfolio. I only look at the invested assets and what's in the bank for our retirement portfolio. This shows you that we're approaching 69.31% in overall asset allocation as we begin 2026. On another tab, the 3 buckets, I take a look based on what I've done to track the current value of our portfolio and their asset allocation. I take a look at the asset allocation within the time buckets as well as the tax buckets. This is a view of our time buckets, and it shows that bucket 1 is mostly cash and treasuries. Bucket 2 has a little bit of tips and I bonds and domestic bonds in there as well. And bucket 3 is where we have US stock, international stock, and REIT investments. We do have a little bit of treasuries longer term in that because it's more than 8 years, so that's in bucket 3. But as you can see, bucket 3 is mostly equity. Now here's a quick snapshot of the asset allocation by tax buckets. I've got taxable here tax-deferred, and tax-free. As you can see, tax-free, our Roth accounts, are primarily equity-based investments. Tax-deferred, I have a mix of things in there. It's closer to a 50-50 equity in tax-deferred. And taxables, likewise, has a lot of different kinds of assets. Yes, we have the treasuries and cash in our bank accounts and brokerage accounts, but we also have some I bonds and we have some equity, long-term equity in our taxable brokerage accounts. Now I use VTI here because it doesn't have a lot of kickoff of income each year. I can let long-term capital gains work for us in this taxable account. Overall here, you could see tax-free is now at 21% based on my decision on January 2nd today to move 401k assets that were in the 401k traditional to the Roth 401k. And I did that for a couple different reasons. One, there was some savings in that account that would have been tax-free because I already paid taxes on it. And this makes it nice and neat. It's all now in Roth. I pay the tax on the taxable gain for the conversion, but now it's all in Roth. I don't have to worry about the bookkeeping of a 401k with after-tax dollars in it anymore after this transaction. That brings the Roth accounts up to 21% of our overall assets. Taxable is at 27% and tax-deferred is at 52%. Now, in past years, I would have made that Roth conversion once we were sure of our tax situation. I pulled the trigger on January 2nd this year based on a couple different factors. One, I did some research in the last year. Is it better to do that Roth conversion early in the year and take advantage of the tax-free growth, or do it late in the year when you're sure of your tax situation? Well, the more and more you are sure of your tax situation and income flows, it makes sense to pull the trigger early in the year. It's also, I saw some strategies about taking your required expenses as a Roth conversion, converting it, and then spending that down. We're not doing that exactly, but I do have the flexibility, since all of our Roth accounts are over 5 years old, to pull down Roth as tax-free income if we need it. Here's a quick look at each of the buckets and how it stands by asset class and tax bucket. Bucket 1, I include treasury and cash in bucket 1, but notice that most of it's in tax deferred. Only about 29% is in our taxable accounts. That's bucket 1. A lot of the bucket 1 cash in the bank is here in the blue, but so is some brokerage account assets in mostly treasury T-bills. In the tax-deferred accounts, I've lined up investments in treasuries and T-bills in bucket 1 that will mature in the next 3 years. They're there, they're safe, I know what they're worth when I need that money. Bucket 2 assets include domestic bonds, I bonds, TIPS. Again, I use the TIPS in my tax-deferred accounts, I bonds in my taxable accounts for a little bit of inflation protection. Treasuries are in 2, the ones that are more than 3 years in maturity, so like 5 to 7 to 10-year treasuries are in bucket 2. And as you can see, bucket 2 by tax bucket, 80% of our bucket 2 is lined up in our tax-deferred accounts, ready to withdraw in those years ahead that we will need them. And the assets in bucket 3 are here. The 80% of bucket 3 is invested in U.S. stock. Another 13% is invested in international. This is where I've got REITs. I do have some TIPS that are longer than the 8 years, the 10-year TIP kind of things, treasuries, and very, very little cash is in bucket 3. And by tax bucket, bucket 3 includes a little bit of each. There's taxable, tax-free, and tax-deferred assets that we've positioned for bucket 3. Now, based on all of this, our bucket 3 can take much higher exposure to equity. Now, as our longevity ceiling gets closer and closer, meaning as we get older, we may reduce the equity in bucket 3, but we both expect to live at least another 10 years, so we're invested for the long haul as our inflation protection. We don't have a lot of COLA. We do have COLA on our Social Security, and I have a small COLA on one of the small pensions that I have. The other two have no COLA protection. So therefore, we need the equity to protect against inflation. This is my overview chart of asset allocation within the buckets, the taxable buckets, the tax-deferred, tax-free, bucket 1, bucket 2, and bucket 3. And it's in the round cylinders, sort of like buckets, in my final overall chart. Now, these are all real charts based on our real retirement. The risk that we take in our portfolio is based on our personal experience. We have a married filing jointly with both of us now over the age of 65 in 2026, and we've adopted a rising equity portfolio. When I began 10 years ago, our portfolio was closer to 50-50. And then I moved up to a 60-40. And in the past few years, as we both move on to Social Security, it'll move closer to a 70-30 portfolio. And that's based on our experience and risk a profile. You need to calculate what you need to meet your expenses in retirement. If you're planning for one, it's a different picture. If you're planning for a retired couple with both significant retirement savings and Social Security earnings, your portfolio may look very different. Hey, if you liked this video, will you please take a moment to subscribe, share this with another DIY retiree, and hit that bell notification for more DIY retirement planning updates. Now here's where you can find a spreadsheet that you can download. Under my Google Sites, and again, it was Google Sites, I was retired. I put a link below. Go to Resources and Spreadsheets. Now down here on this page, and again, I'll move this up on the page for this week, but you can find a sample portfolio for buckets 2025. I have not made a 2026 version of it, but this is a zip file, and you should be able to open this up and get these and download them to your numbers file if you can use numbers. You download it by doing this to download it. Now, if you don't use numbers, I've converted it here, and again, you'll want to click here, and this has the last version of portfolio by buckets that I've done and included this sort by maturity column in one of the tabs. But again, you can open this with Google Sheets and it will convert into Google Sheets. But don't stop there. What you want to do is make a copy or save it to your Google Sheets. Don't try to edit this version. This is just the sample that's up there. But once you do that, you can also download here a copy of Excel onto your machine, and it'll do that. Download it. You can open it up if you use Excel or Google Sheets. Do it that way as well. I will conclude with my standard warning. I am not a professional planner. I'm not an accountant. I have no initials after my name. So take these as entertaining ideas from one educated consumer to another. Always do your own due diligence and seek out a professional if you need one.